Okay, so we're moving on to marketing now. This first presentation for OCR GCSE Business Revision from Year 10 covers 2.123, or at least I hope it does. We've only got 15 minutes maximum, so let's get going. Okay, so with every functional area within the business, it always starts with the role of. So the role of marketing covers these three areas. You are essentially trying to identify and understand your customers, which is where market research comes in. You are informing your customers, which is where promotion comes in, or some of the P's, and you're increasing your sales. Again, the use of the P's will help with that. So just remember that if you're asked about why a business is marketing, to focus it around these three answers. Okay. So market research. We had this conversation in one of the previous videos. Remember, there are more types of market research available. If you're reading other books or using other websites, there will be more. Your syllabus requires you to look at these 4 primary research and 4 secondary research areas and nothing else. So just focus in on these. Remember that primary research is data that is collected by the business. It can be tailored to their needs, but it's going to cost you a lot of money. And it can come in the form of questionnaires, interviews, focus groups, and trialing. Remember, a questionnaire is something that is sent out to people or sent online and is normally answered by them. It could be multiple choice questions, etc., and so on. Very easy to analyse and whack into graphs and statistics. Whereas an interview is, again, a list of questions, but this time it's normally asked to that person. Now, it can still be done over the internet in some sort of online meeting or over the telephone, but there'll be a lot less questions and it will give a lot more qualitative data because they can explain what they mean by their answers. A focus group is a small group of people that meet and they will discuss perhaps a new product or an innovation that a business has had, and they might be quite regular groups, so they get to know each other and get to know the business. And trialing, this is not just trialing the product like you see in the supermarkets. This is trialing a launch in a restricted area. So instead of launching a product to the whole country, you can do a trial in a smaller area, for example, East Anglia, and just launch it in that area as long as that group represents the people you're aiming your product at. So primary research can be collected by the business in those 4 different areas. Secondary research is information that has already been collected by someone else. So you can see from the things that are offered here that it's clearly collected by someone else. The census data will have been collected by the government, and it's only really going to give us any help with things like population makeup and statistics. Then you've got newspapers and magazines. Again, they might be specialist magazines, but newspapers and so on, they're going to be articles. They might not going to give you the same sort of information that primary research is. Websites, well, it could be any websites, it could be your competitors' websites, it could be suppliers' websites to help you get information. And then obviously the internet in general, where you can find out about lots of different things. With all of those, though, you've got to question the reliability of those data and whether it's actually any helpful to you in the organization. So, key questions to ask yourself when you're choosing which market research method to recommend to the business. So, think of these 4 areas. How much can the business afford to spend? Okay, it's much cheaper to go online and look on the internet, look at some websites and try and get information from there, but it's going to be very unreliable data. But if you can't afford to do questionnaires, then that's what you're going to have to do. Think about what sort of information is required. Do you need people's opinions? Do you just need yes or no answers? Are you trying to find out about new products? Or are you trying to find out existing products? What information is required for the decision that you need to make? Where are the location of your customers? Do you primarily trade online? So you actually don't know where your customers are. It makes it very hard to find them, to ask them any market research. Or is it much easier to get hold of them and what they want? And then how quickly is it needed? Because undertaking primary research is going to take a lot more time than it would be to log on and download a market research report from online. I've mentioned in passing Think about whether you want quantitative or qualitative data. It really will depend on those four previous questions on how much of you want of each of these. Obviously, the quantitative data is a much easier to work with. It's the stuff you can draw graphs from and be able to draw more conclusions. But you might want qualitative data if you're thinking about innovating a product and you need more of an idea of what your audience want. Don't forget as well, though, there are not many opportunities in paper one for you to work with numbers, and there has to be some number work. So you may have to analyze market research data that's been collected or look at the statistics that they've got to help understand the recommendations you've got to make later on. Okay. You've then got market segmentation. So think about these considerations when it comes to how you want to segment the market. So you could think about which products for which markets. How are you going to choose which products you're going to do? You might think about what prices you're trying to charge. You're going to charge different prices to older and younger um, customers. You might be thinking about how you're going to promote to certain people. Again, younger customers more receptive to social media and online presence. And you might be thinking about where to locate to make sure that you can get to your market segment. So with those four kind of considerations swimming around, you then have to think about how you can segment the market. Now, again, there are lots of ways you can segment the market. Your syllabus for OCR lists these 5 methods. So if they're going to ask you a direct question, it will be on one of these 5 methods. So don't panic about anything else you may have read or seen. Focus on these 5. They're fairly straightforward. Age and gender, I think we can gloss over those. That's exactly what it says on the tin, so to speak. To a certain extent, location is as well. Location also means geographically. So you might be aiming a product to the north of the country or the south of the country, as well as it could be just in a certain town or city. Lifestyle, that covers a lot. So it could cover things like religion, it could cover things like cultural background and so on. It also covers things like hobbies and things like that. So if you want to aim your products at model collectors, it's a niche hobby, that kind of comes under there as well. And then income, again, you might think relatively straightforward, but it kind of covers social class as well, because in this country we use incomes for socioeconomic groupings, which are to do with the occupations that are seen as in the different classes. So you would assume that people with higher incomes would want different products to people with lower incomes. It's a very simplistic view with that, because bear in mind that you might earn a lot of money, but actually you might not have a lot of spare money lying around. So we always are wary when using income as a factor. But obviously there are things that are aimed at different income brackets. So what are the exam tips for this? Well, don't forget to read the case study and use the material or data provided. Examiners don't just put it in to keep you happy and something to read. If there are data there, if there's material, there are graphs, then it's probably needed in a question somewhere, either to be quoted from or to be analysed. Remember to explain why the information is useful. Because if you're provided with a form of market research or 2 or 3 different forms of market research, explain why that is more useful than the other one. And if asked, make a judgment if something is good or not. Is that report any good? Is that website data any good? Is that questionnaire data any good? Okay. Don't forget to show knowledge and understanding. So you can talk about market segmentation as a way of splitting up the market. Well, that's just knowledge. Understanding comes from saying that you can split it up by age and gender and so on, and talk about it in that way. And if you have got data, use your generic calculations, use averages, use percentage changes and so on to break that down and add a little bit more meaning to your data. Hopefully by doing that, you can then have enough information to make a supported judgment in any recommendation question that comes next.